Welcome, dear people. Today we are here for our third interview, Back to Business Action. And I'm already sure at the beginning that this is going to be an amazing, practical, and super interesting conversation.
And I'm sure we will lack time,
Yes,
so
yes.
for me as well.
Thank you for being here with us today. Our guest is Larisa Halilovic. Larisa is many, many things to us. I can even begin to explain, what impact has she got on our lives, and she had it for the past 10 years. So I'm extremely grateful to have her in our lives, and I'm extremely grateful to have her today at the interview. Welcome, Lara.
Hello, thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.
Many of you who know Lara already know that she is extremely active, that she's a businesswoman who never stops, and that she has special love for education. Today we are going to talk about two topics which probably are the biggest two challenges today in these corona times. The first one is how to lead and how to lead our teams. And the second one is more personal, what to do with our emotions and what are emotions doing to us in these times. Lara, really looking forward to it. So let's just start at the beginning. Uh, how how are you seeing or experiencing this perspective? What gift has it brought to you?
Well, it's really interesting because before all of this started, I was one of the fortunate ones who discovered the beauty of being able to work from wherever you choose. And like yourselves, and many people around the world, and the organization I lead, we've had the opportunity to do that already. So technology-wise, I think this has taught us lots. We are now leading and hosting meetings and summits and having dialogue with people all around the world without moving at all, without leaving the comfort of our home or wherever we are in isolation. And that's something that really, I think, will change everything once this is over. This is one of the top things I have realized. The second thing I've realized is also that things like this Zoom call, they're hugely effective, but they're also really, really intensive. So when you are in a Zoom call or any other video conferencing call, your senses, your whole sensory system is really focused on the screen and the people you're interacting with, and the microphone and even the surroundings. What I have realized is that a lot of us have gone into this to schedule one meeting after another, after another, after another, without giving ourselves a break to actually recover from the previous talk or from the previous encounter electronically. And I have personally found that my energy is not the same if I go from one meeting to another to another. So I would strongly recommend, I know leaders of businesses, organizations, teams, etc. It's a challenging time because there are many decisions to be made, and we have to think on our feet. If we want to make sure that we keep our people, if we want to ensure that people feel safe and secure to an extent that's possible, we need to find solutions. But we also need to remember to schedule in rest time, break time, and play time. As simple as that.
This is when for most of the people that are used to being managed by a manager or someone, they have someone else do that for them, you know, so they know they're working this many hours and so on. Now that pretty much everyone is his own boss, in his own, let's say, four walls or whatever that is, a lot of people forget to schedule, as you say, uh, relaxing time and playing time and so on. Those lucky ones that have kids do not need actually to do that, you know.
Yes, that's another really interesting finding for me. Prior to this, some people used to say I'm the master of organization. You know, I had things sorted out so I could do so much. When we started isolation, and we started it a little bit earlier because my two kids had a certain virus before everyone else did. And we basically have been at home for, I think this is our 6th week now, in, you know, our little family isolation. And it's also quite eye-opening to see how much energy it takes to ensure that in the schedule you have planned in the schooling time, the cooking time, the cleaning time, and all of this that might not be, for some people, part of their daily routine every day. You know,
Mhm.
I used to love cooking when I feel like it, but
Yeah.
when the actual schedule changes, we need to remember that people that we are leading might also be in similar situations. Um, there might be single parents out there for whom it's even more
Oh
challenging.
my God.
And what you were saying at one point, we need to make sure that our days don't turn into 24-hour connected time. Um, I have literally had to tell myself, now you're going to switch your internet off, and you're going to just sit there and relax, because otherwise the tendency is either to work with the phone, to school with the phone, to get informed via the phone, or to be connected via the phone. But that's the tricky part. So I would strongly recommend for all of you leading yourselves and your teams to actually remember to take time off screens, like consciously take time off screen.
Very interesting point there. I remember in the first weeks, so I mean, this whole situation, of course, brought so many changes in the business world, in the whole world, and especially in our country, uh, which is not so digitally aware in a higher sense, let's say. So many businesses, when this happened, they started transferring some of their business activities online. Like for some of them even, you know, used Zoom or Skype for the first time for meetings or so on. But there was also a group of companies which already did some activities. They used, they had a remote concept in the company, or they did a lot of things online. And I remember when it all started, many of these companies who already were working remotely in some way started talking how, oh yeah, this is great, you know, we are all in this isolation, and everything is fine for us, we are used to this. And somehow I felt, and through my experience in working with teams, I realized that something that is not that easy as it was presented. I felt that many things were being overlooked, such as that before, when you went to work remote, it was because you felt that you needed it and you were more comfortable doing it from home, and now you are practically obliged. So for me, that was a big moment of change, where you now, I mean, before you did something from a freedom perspective, and now you have to do it from obligation perspective. I mean, that was particularly hard for me, even though Amir and I have been working remote and location free for the past 3 years. And that moment was really hard for me. I mean, suddenly being obliged to do something in a particular way. Um, What is your perspective on this? What else is also being overlooked when it comes to teams in this situation?
Well, I think we discussed briefly a couple of weeks ago, when someone has a personal core value of freedom, and when this freedom is taken away, that can be really, really frustrated. So for some people, actually being forced to do it one way or another is hard. But we also need to remember that the best thing we can do at this time to protect ourselves and people around us is to stay at home. So the fact that you're literally saving the world by staying at home could be an additional incentive to remember, and also to remember that we are not, let's say, immobilized so that we cannot leave homes.
Yeah.
If there is a need to go to the shop, if there is a need to go to the chemist, if you need to do some exercise, if you simply need to take a breath outside, you can do this, so that your freedom is not really taken away completely. And for some people, this is important to remember, and to actually say to yourself, okay, how can I make the best out of this situation, rather than being stuck in the loop of, oh my God, I can't go anywhere. And for some people, this is hard. You know, we need to be aware that in our teams, there will be some individuals for whom this is the scariest thing that has ever happened to them. Now, what's really interesting here in the Balkans, because people have been through a lot, there are different triggers and different responses to what's going on. Some people have already been through something like this, but different, and they feel that we're used to this, we can handle this, no problem at all. But for others, we need to remember that this is activating all sorts of triggers from the past. And we as team leaders really need to be aware that different individuals in our team are taking this in different ways. And basically, depending on how large the size of our team is, I do believe that it's role of a leader to communicate, to lead the joint atmosphere, even when everyone is working remotely, at least to give opportunity for people to have coffee, to have the sense of belonging, which is, you know, really, really important at all times, and especially at times of uncertainty. I also think that we as leaders need to make sure that when we communicate messages, that we're being really authentic. So if the situation is serious, as it is, we shouldn't be going around saying, nah, this is nothing, because it's serious. I mean, we are in the process of something that's changing the history. And I mean, on the one hand, it can be scary for some, but on the other hand, imagine that, you know, being a leader of any sort in this sort of situation. If you use your leadership potential, and if you work with your people in the way that's going to help them get through this, you are part of the positive solution for the future, you know, if this is what you focus on. And also, I think it's important to remember the little things that really do make us humans happy. And we really did forget some of these things, you know. Little things such as cooking, if that's what you like, or eating, if that's what you like, being creative, you know, playing board games with your kids, with your family, or whomever you are in isolation with. If you're on your own, I would strongly recommend that you connect with someone. If two bubbles meeting together is not possible, and they're calling this isolation bubble a bubble in New Zealand, where my other home is. So if it's not possible for two bubbles to merge and for two people to be together physically, it's hugely important to switch on that emotional intelligence and to actually reach out to people. Now, I mentioned emotional intelligence, and just as a reminder for people, the definition is being able to understand and know yourself, your emotions, where they're coming from, etc., but also your relationship with other people. So at this point in time, the first step is for me to understand, for example, if I'm feeling angry or anxious, why is that happening? I need to acknowledge that it's absolutely okay and that it's absolutely normal that I'm feeling this way. And then to slowly move into constructive way of saying, okay, what can I do about it? But also, if you're working with teams or if you're living with someone, you need to remember that these other people have emotions as well, and they have their own reactions and triggers and what we call schemata, uh, the schemes in your mind based on your previous experiences. And for some people, as you know, they'll be quite happy being there on their own with others not interfering. But for some, they really need someone to call them up or type them a message and say, hey, how are you doing? But just literally to ask for your well-being. Now, this is something where we see examples around the world where some leaders get it so wrong and others get it a lot more right.
Okay,
Now,
give
I don't know.
us examples like what
Yes.
is it? What are they thinking?
I'm not going to give you an example of the wrong ones because there are quite a few of those,
Okay.
and I don't want to be naming names. But I would definitely emphasize Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, as a hugely inspirational leader who tells the truth. She tells the hard truth, but she also demonstrates empathy in all she does. So when you see her quarantine instructions, I mean, New Zealand went into lockdown, I think it's now probably 10 days ago. The way she communicated it was just super engaging to say, yes, it's going to be hard, but you can do this. She even did a press conference to address issues of Easter and Easter Bunny, and she engaged young people in, you know, painting pictures of Easter Bunny eggs, which will be placed on the windows so that people don't forget about the joy of Christmas, but also not to feel the need and urge to go out buying Christmas presents and eggs and things like this. So this, to me, really demonstrates that you as a leader are thinking about the well-being, both physical and mental, of the people you're leading.
Yeah. If I may ask, companies around here are waiting for the government to like decide whether there's going to be any subsidies or not, but it's like already too late a little bit and so on. So at the beginning, I mean, the two of us, we went through fear and then panic thing, you know, and even though my version of it is not actually getting out that easy, you know, Isla was like running away from news, you know, so she wouldn't hear like anything, you know, because it will freak her out, you know. Okay, I get that, you know.
It's hard for people with empathy, which is like expressed. I mean, just to hearing the news, I could just, you know.
And at the same time, I was like analyzing things and trying to get as many information as I can. But a lot of times I would feel that, you know, something in my stomach and so on, you know, and I don't know, some crazy thoughts would actually go through my mind and so on. And I later recognized it was a panic episodes or something like that. But that's like that's one part that only had something to do with the virus only. And then when I start, because I love thinking about the future, I mean, that's the way I think actually, you know. I am thinking about the economy, about what's this going to be, what this can be, what it can turn out to be, and stuff like that. And I know for a lot of leaders today who have their companies and have tens or hundreds of employees are facing a horrible decision, you know, whether to keep them and they have no idea how to pay them paychecks, or maybe they have for 10 more days, but not for everyone, not for not full, or letting them go. And I don't know. When you put the numbers, when you think only about the numbers, the decision is so easy. But these people are not just facing fear or emotions about the coronavirus and health, but they are thinking about 100 other people and how are they going to survive this and what's the best and so on. Probably a lot of fear because of the banks, the loans, the responsibilities, and so on. So I mean, if you could make it, I know it's a hard question, but if you could make it a bit easier for those people, I think it would mean a lot.
Um, this is a really tricky one because I don't think very many people are even aware of the scale of the economic impact of what's going on. So we're only going to see that in times to come. And speaking from a local perspective, seeing how complex our administration is by the time the decisions are reached, it's already kind of a little bit lagging behind and late, really. But looking at the perspective of business people, especially business owners who have lots of employees, as I said at the beginning, I really do think it's important to be authentic and to communicate the truth. So if we're experiencing a difficult period where there may not be full salaries, or I mean, there are many scenarios. Like you said, some people are letting people go, other people are trying to keep them any way they can. Other people have had to close completely. If you're in the tourism industry, if you are
Yeah.
in many other service industries, basically, people are already trying to innovate and find ways to persevere. Um, Basically, my thinking on this is everyone who's once found a solution on how to continue and keep going, they will do it again. And I believe, yes, financially it's going to be difficult. Some companies are going to go bankrupt. People are already losing jobs. But as a leader, as a business leader, um, however weird this might sound, this is again going to show who's agile enough, who's able to think on their feet, also who has good intentions for their employees. Because if it's only about money, the decision will be very clear. And I'm not the best person to talk to about that because for me, it's never only about money. There's got to be the human side of things as well. But I do believe that if you place the positive intention at the beginning of whatever you are doing, uh, I strongly believe that even those who will have to make some serious decision will, at the end of the day, feel better about what they're doing. Because, it's not realistic to think that we will be saved by the government and the system in this part of the world. In parts of the world, like, for example, Australia, there are incentives already coming in. But, in places like the United States, people are already laid off. They already have to find their own way. So looking at it from an individual perspective, this again will show innovation, it will show creativity, it will show resilience, but also for some people, it will mean a period of panic and period of insecurity and a period of not having a job potentially and having to figure out what it is that I can offer that's still going to be useful beyond the scenario we're in at the moment.
One last question from me. I mean, in these times, I always search for what works and what can we focus on now. And I believe that the best thing about these times is that more and more people are seeing mental health as a everyday topic, and that is what I truly like, because being mindful and aware of what's going on with you is definitely the first step of how you can be of help to other people. So I believe that for Amir and me, we are years in these topics, in emotional intelligence, in how to detect them, how to deal with them, and I mean, they even when you know all these things and all these informations and techniques, they still do happen, and it's still really challenging to deal with it. I mean, it's not just a switch when you feel like a panic attack and then you just, oh yeah, this is it, and it goes away. You have to go through it, you have to reflect, and I mean, it's a really amazing process. But for many people, even who are like in their 30s or 40s, this is the first time that they are faced with this, let's say, process. You know, everybody is talking about it, everybody is providing some kind of tips and insights, which is great. But still, I believe that many people don't actually know where to start. So if I were a person who has decided for the first time in my life to deal with my emotions in the, let's say, in the right way, what would you suggest to me? Like what steps to take, and what to, you know, where to educate myself, or what to read, or what's I don't know.
Well, there's a lot in that question. That's a really, really big question. We can talk for days on that. The first thing is to first understand that there are no good and bad emotions or negative and positive emotions. There are only comfortable and uncomfortable ones. And our emotions come in a whole spectrum. So there is a really good reason why you feel sad. For example, sadness is basically our way to try and come with closure and to say goodbye to a loved one, even if it's not a grieving process. Originally, that's what sadness was there for. Fear, for example, is very closely linked to anger, and basically the fear of the unknown and um, anger, which sometimes takes over, are a way of protecting ourselves from the enemy. You know, in this case, the enemy is the unknown. But there is a lot we can do in order to first acknowledge these emotions, as long as we are not talking about something serious. So if we're talking about, let's say, standard emotions that affect us on daily basis, there's a lot we can do on our own in acknowledging them, trying to turn them into constructive actions, etc. And I would strongly recommend Susan David's TED talk on emotional agility for anyone who wants to learn more about this. But I do want to emphasize that this is the time when actually a lot of people are experiencing panic attacks and, you know, anxiety, which is beyond your standard. You know, it's. I have already been approached by people who have experienced things like, you know, chest pain, not being able to breathe, not being able to control your thoughts. And what I would like to say in these instances, first, to help yourself, is basically to do exactly the opposite of what you were talking about before, Amir, and that's not to think about the future and what if and what then, and if this happens, then this will happen. Because at the time when we are experiencing high levels of anxiety, our brain just goes into a loop of analyzing, oh, if this happens, this will happen, and it drives us into basically a thinking spiral of unknowns, and no one really knows. You know, even the biggest experts who are now analyzing the financial scenario, and even the biggest researchers who are working on the vaccine and whatever, even they don't have the full detail. So what I often say to people, if you are experiencing anxiety at that moment in time, the best thing to do is to focus on not what if, but on what is. So at the moment, what are the colors on the beautiful cushion which is slipped? So it's here.
Uh-huh.
Focus on the things you see right here and now. Also, try and do something with your hands, such as drawing, painting, doing something manual. And what really, really helps is to talk to someone. So if you feel that you are running out of breath or that things are kind of slipping your control, even an innocent conversation about something completely different can help. But please, if you are experiencing serious issues, there are so many psychologists who are doing an amazing job. There are so many helplines being set up at the moment around the country and around the world. These services are free. You can call them by phone or submit a question online. But whatever you do, try not to get stuck in the loop, because if you continue with what if, what happened to me the other night is because I used to have problems with asthma, and as you know, coronavirus is not really good for you if you have these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So on one occasion I thought I was short of breath, and I started going and the more I was thinking about it, the more I got into the whole asthmatic attack mode, when in reality I was basically hyperventilating, and I was helping my anxiety rise. What helped me shift was, first acknowledging that yes, okay, I am experiencing some breathing problems, but let's focus on different kind of breathing. So let's breathe through your nose rather than through your mouth. Similarly, so meditation, yoga, exercise, all those things, however silly it may sound, when the whole world is experiencing this and that, how am I going to take time off to exercise? We need to. This is really, really important for
Mhm.
our mental health and for our physical health. And as I said, the third bit is connecting with other people. The final thing about emotional intelligence is being able to motivate yourself and motivate others. And when is a better time than this one to practice what it is that actually you like doing that keeps you going, but also how to motivate other people? Because for some people, as I said, this is the scariest thing. For others, this is the most exciting thing, and they would go and find a cure and save people and do all sorts of things. But whatever we're doing, we need to do it in a conscious way, so that you stop and pause and think what you're going through, why are you going through this, and to connect with others. Amazing professionals all around the world.
Definitely. Cool. I will invite everyone to, if they have troubles finding it, to try ask you, and I'm sure you'll probably post it or will, I don't know, links or something like that, where people actually can get something. I've already seen some stuff that are quite handy coming from you. One of the things I like to do is visualize the fairy tale. But you do also know that, if we can imagine it, we can achieve it. It's pretty much like that. So there was this one day in the first or the start of the second week of our self-isolation, when I asked Ayla, I was just like sitting. I asked her, "Hey, what do you think when the when this situation is over and we end up in a way that we paid out all of our debts, we bought a new car, and have lots of money planning to go, I don't know, do something." And I remember like the instant reaction of Isla was like, she was, that was like funny and crazy and so on. But then like 2 seconds after, she thought, well, like everything's possible. So, uh, and If you were, I'm asking you right now, if you were to think about something crazy, this is over and you are getting out as how good crazy, what situation would you be in?
Well, my situation would be completely different to yours. You know, as you were talking about the things, I was like, what do you need a new car for?
I
Your
don't know.
car is good enough. You know?
You
I
know
didn't
why?
give it that much
Wait,
thought,
wait,
but that was
wait,
like,
wait. We have a two-seater and we have a baby, so it's pretty uncomfortable when you have to, move the little car and put the baby. And ever since Emma was born, we were talking about the new car. Like, we need a new car with more doors.
There you go. Then that's your dream come true. I don't know. For me, the biggest wish for many many years has been a teleporter.
okay.
And I've been going on and on about teleporters so much that for the past 2 years, my son, whose also name is Amir, like yourself, he keeps writing to Santa Claus to get me a teleporter. And every year, when the Santa Claus comes, he goes, "Oh, sorry, Mom, the teleporter is not ready yet." So,
Well, look, I strongly believe if we can think about it, imagine it, and so on. No, there is probably like it might not happen while we live, but people didn't think they'd be able to fly, and now they do. It's like crazy things are actually happening. Sometimes I'm talking like people are going from this 4G, 5G, something, for cell phones and how we're all wasting time and so on. And I usually portray the possible future for what if in the primary schools, I don't know, 50, 100 years from now, or maybe 10 years from now, we'd be learning techniques of telepathy, of communicating with people without phones, so we could actually establish connection with someone else and communicate through our thoughts.
You should
People
ask
are
Santa Claus.
yeah, yeah, ask
please,
Santa
please
Claus.
have Amir add that to the list,
Yeah, yeah, he's already basically discussing things like telekinesis and telepathy and all those special powers. He's already discussing those and requesting them from time to time. So I shall ask him to do that for you. But on a more serious note, in my vision of the future beyond this, I would personally like to see people really more connected on the level of solidarity, because now, if ever, we see that we're all in the same boat. It really doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, how big or small your apartment is. In reality, our flesh and blood is all the same, no matter what our name and where we're at and all of this. So in my version, the idealistic kind of version of the future, we would be a lot more connected. We would have a lot more solidarity. We would also be a lot less focused on material, but a lot more focused on the social. Um, and to be honest, as you know, I used to travel so much for work, for meetings, for
Mhm.
uh, business, for so many things. After this, I think I will really, really think carefully when I choose to travel, because air travel at one point just became such a mundane thing. In my beautiful version of the future, if I choose to travel, I will really want to do it, to see the people I love, to really make a human to human difference, or to see some beautiful places. But,
Yeah, like have some scenery from the car and so on. Maybe definitely avoid highways if possible, and then make it so that you're not in a hurry, so you can like go through places and
that's it.
experience something.
The other day we talked with Mike Waldron, who is one of the active citizens facilitator, and he, as we were talking about the whole situation, and especially from a facilitator's point of view, we both practically said in the same time that when it comes to this situation, we are led by the one appreciative inquiry rule that in every situation, every organization, and every team, there is something that works. And that is my end message for this interview. Whatever is going on, whatever is going on in your business, in your team, in you, it's that there is something and definitely something that you can find that works. And I wish that to us, to you, to everybody. And thank you really, Lara, for saving the time for this extremely practical advice. And I invite all of you to follow Lara on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. She's pretty active, and she shares valuable pieces of advice of her own, and also of other inspiring people she's connected.
Instagram is crazy. With so many stories and so many photos and everything, and descriptions and stuff like that. I enjoy watching it, yeah.
Lara, thank you again. It was a special pleasure.
Thank you, and all the best to everyone watching out there. Look after yourself.
Yeah.
Bye.